Hey everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 937. I start off with knight f3, the Reti opening. And the interesting thing about the Reti is it can transform into a lot of different openings. A lot of times as black I just play knight f6, kind of waiting to see what setup white is going for. d5 is the most direct move against the Reti, after which I would go with the Reti gambit with c4. But he played c5, the third choice there, and quite a reasonable way to play. He's just going for a hedgehog type of setup with the fianchetto here. And we'll see that in the game. Now I could, this is kind of an interesting move order wrinkle. Having seen c5 here, I could play e4. And it's a way of getting into a Sicilian without allowing black to play e5. Say you don't like e4, e5 for some reason, but you like e4 against the Sicilian. You could transpose into the Sicilian right here. So it's interesting, but not what I was intending to do. And of course, I could have gone directly to the English right here with c4, but I decided to keep my options open a little bit and play g3. And all of these moves are fine. Black goes with b6, so he's just going with his hedgehog setup. I go bishop g2, he goes bishop b7. Now I go c4. I decide no sense in fooling around. This pawn here is often a part of this setup with the bishop. You know, you're trying to get more control over this diagonal, although he's already set up an opposing bishop, so it's going to be hard for me to get a lot of control there, but it's starting to stake out a claim to the center. And you'll see right here, you see we were in kind of a rare section of the opening book, but after c4 and knight f6, we've transposed. And so now we're not in a Reti opening, we're actually back in an English opening, and this is a pretty standard line against the English, setting up a hedgehog. And I could just castle here, that'd be the main move, but there's nothing wrong with knight c3 either. And he goes e6, and I think this is pretty much completing the hedgehog setup. He's got pawns on the third row, and he's got this pawn here. So this pawn will typically come to d6 at some point in the hedgehog. And when I went ahead and castled here, at this point it is the main move. He goes bishop e7, and I go with d4. I was kind of surprised. I was not sure what to play at this point. I didn't quite recognize this position, having gotten into it from a Reti, and you know, I don't see the setup that often, honestly. So I just thought d4 looked like a logical move here. b3 I thought about a little bit, just to fianchetto the bishop. With d4, you're intending to bring the bishop out along this diagonal instead of fianchettoing it. So those are your two decisions, you know, which way you want to put the bishop. You might go with d4 or b3. And then this move in the middle, rook e1, is not a move I considered at all, but it's very logical. And you know, I did play e4 at some point later, so this is just preparing e4 immediately. So that's also an interesting way to play. Anyway, I went with d4. And he took, which is almost the only move there, and I took with the knight. And so I guess this is my inexperience showing in this position. In this particular position, you should take with the queen and not allow the trade of bishops. And you know, actually, I hadn't been paying attention to that. I wasn't quite aware I was offering the trade of bishops. But even if I had been aware, I would have been a little bit reluctant to play this move, because I would expect knight c6, and then I have to retreat the queen, and he's gained a tempo. But I did get to, even in this case, I do get to keep my bishop. And also it turns out that queen to f4 is a good square for the queen, a little bit surprisingly, but you know, maybe there's some weaknesses over here on the king side that can be poked at. Anyway, that's kind of interesting, and maybe I'll try that. If I'm in a similar position, it's just a little too easy on black to take this way and let him trade off the bishop. Although I couldn't say he's really equalized here, but he's got, and maybe he's close to being equal here. Anyway, he castled. I went with e4 now. I think, yeah, because I have this e4 move, I think I still have some slight pull in this position. He goes knight c6, and then here I went knight db5. So at this point, we're just out of the opening book, but the chess engine definitely prefers rook e1, and just leaving the knight there to be traded off. I was following that kind of general rule that if you have a Maroczy bind, you want to keep the minor pieces on and try and prove that your opponent's position is somewhat cramped. But in this case, he could have, let's just look at the notation tab here. He could have kicked my knight around a bit. Might have been annoying. He could have gone a6. And then if the knight comes here, he can take it off with the bishop and damage my, my pawn chain, my pawn structure on the queen side there. So I probably just have to go back. And I've lost a tempo, and black really is equal in this position. Maybe even a little better, but hard to say exactly. But certainly in the range of about equal. So, but he didn't do that. He played d6. So now he has got the full hedgehog setup with these pawns here. Let's see. I continue with bishop f4, which I guess is okay. He played e5 here. I mean, it encourages him to create this backwards pawn. I went bishop g5. The chess engine is questioning some of these moves here because I'm allowing a tactic. We'll get to that pretty soon here. Let's see. He played a6 here, and I went knight a3. So knight a3 is a mistake, and I should just take this knight off here. And there's actually a tactic for me here. I can grab this pawn. My knight has been hanging this whole time, but well, if he takes the knight now, I can take his knight. And if he takes my queen, then I can take back with the knight. So that's I had an opportunity to grab a pawn there, but instead I retreated. And then he has a tactic here, which he didn't take advantage of. He played h6. But he could have played this one. He could have played knight takes e4. I think I noticed something like this in the game, although I don't know if it was in this particular position. Anyway, this trail of destruction type of... this is a trail of destruction type of tactic. I take his bishop. He takes my knight. I take his queen. He takes my queen. I take a pawn. He takes a pawn. And then finally, rook to b1. Chases the knight away and defends the bishop. And this pawn is defended by my knight. But, well, if we count, he's actually won a pawn because he grabbed that pawn in the beginning, and at the end we both got a pawn, but he stays one pawn up. But, well, the chess engine rates this position as about equal, probably because I have active pieces here. The knights are going to have to take some time to regroup. Maybe I have a target here on d6. Anyway, that's enough for an equal position, but no more for black, so he can't really get an advantage that way. Anyway, he kicked my bishop, and I dropped back. He played queen to c7, went knight c2. The chess engine actually prefers f3 here, just shoring up the center solidly and then I guess getting rid of any kind of nonsense against these pawns here. But anyway, I think knight c2 is a fine move. Got to bring that knight back into the game somehow. Let's see, he went rook fd8, supporting this pawn, and maybe he can... I guess it's going to be hard for him to ever push that, but he can defend it at least. I played b3 now. I wanted to get a solid pawn structure here for myself. He goes rook a to b8. So yeah, maybe he has a way of kind of freeing himself by pushing these pawns forward. First the b pawn and then the d pawn. Maybe even sacrificing there at some point to open things up. Anyway, I put my rook in the center with rook c1. He goes knight to d7. I go queen e2. Here is where the chess engine really likes the move knight to d5. And yeah, ever since black missed that opportunity to play the tactical knight takes e4 move, the chess engine has started to like white's position. So I've kind of gradually built up my advantages here. And now the knight to d5 move is pretty logical, chasing his queen around and threatening that bishop. And maybe, I can pile up and then at some point exchange off that bishop and just win the d-pawn. So yeah, the chess engine is giving white a pretty big advantage here with that knight d5 move. It keeps a slight edge for white the way I play it, but I didn't get around to playing knight d5 until much later, and I really should have gone for that as soon as I had the opportunity. As soon as you can play that move without the knight just being immediately exchanged off. And sometimes you even want to allow the exchange, especially if you've got the rook opposite the queen like this. There's sometimes tactics there. Anyway, I go queen e2. He went knight to c5, brings his knight into an active position here. I go f3 now, holding up the center. Yeah, maybe why that was why the chess engine liked f3. It saw that pressure was coming against that e-pawn. Let's see, he went bishop g5 here. I went in and traded and played queen to e3, poking at that loose pawn there, which he defended. I was thinking these holes on the king side here might give me some chances, although it turned out to be hard to exploit. Anyway, finally here I play knight d5. He brings his queen over to f7. So if I'd played it earlier, his queen would have had to have gone the other way and would have taken another move for it to get back to the king side. So maybe that's why that would have been better than playing it when I did. Anyway, rook to the center, rook fd1. He goes a5. I push on. I'm preparing to double here and just try and win that d-pawn. I'm just piling up on his backwards pawn here. He goes rook d7, preparing to defend it. I double. He goes queen e6, just holding on to things there. And go queen f2. I'm thinking also of pushing the f-pawn and maybe creating some weaknesses over here. At this point, the chess engine likes to move h3. And after g6, rook to h1. So this is also an idea. I don't know, it's about the same as after you play through the moves evaluation. He is still just a slight edge for white here, but it seems like an interesting way to play, so I thought I would mention that. And queen f2 also keeps a slight edge for white. So he goes king f7 here. He's preparing to bring his rook over to the h-file. So this half-open h-file is a tempting target for both sides. Let's see, but I'm still thinking about the center here. I go knight a3. I couldn't figure out how to get pressure on that pawn, but I finally figured out that knight here would be a good way to increase the pressure. So he went knight d4, blocking it, and so this is a point where I sacked the exchange. The chess engine does not entirely approve, but actually thinks the position is equal after I've sacrificed the exchange. So equal or slightly better for white. So it's a decent move, not horrible, but the chess engine would just play simply with knight b5. And that forces this file open because I'm going to trade that knight off if he doesn't take. So he takes. And, you know, I saw this idea, but I just didn't like the idea that he had two pawns blockading three pawns. Even if I win this one, there's no guarantee that I'll be able to win that endgame if he can maintain this blockade on the queen side. So I wasn't too happy with this idea. But, well, let's continue the line for a little bit. The chess engine goes king g8 here. And then push on with g4, queen f7, push on with h4. So that's the idea, having kind of blocked things up in the center. The chess engine switches its attention to the king side. And now I'm prepared very quickly to get my pieces onto the h-file. And this looks like a good position for white. So that's the way to keep the strongest advantage. Instead, I sacked the exchange, which leads to a position which is basically about even. So, but I have pressure here, so it's maybe not so easy for black to find all the right moves. But the best move here was g4. And this is all about the timing. He played g4 a little bit later, but if he plays g4 now, I can't push on with f4 because my e-pawn is under defended. He's got the knight and the queen trained on it, and I just have the rook defending it. So that's not an option. Knight to b5 was recommended by the chess engine here. And if he takes, well, I take back with the queen, and that defends the pawn. So, and like I said, this position seems to be about even. Instead, he went rook h8. I went knight to b5 now. That was my plan. Get that knight back in the game, put pressure on the center here. He goes queen h3 check. And after queen h3 check, the evaluation is in favor of white. So the queen has kind of gone to the wrong side. I can adequately defend here with my queen. And now when he pushes g4, this pawn is adequately defended because this queen is over here. And so I can just take it or push on. I chose to push on, which is a good move. And at this point, white is just winning. Let's see. He played g5 here, and I took it. He was short on time at this point, too, and he just let his clock run out. But I'm really just breaking through at this point. And probably this last move of g5 was kind of hurried because it's pretty obvious I can take that due to the pin. But even this move g4 was not the best play here, and already white had probably a winning edge there. So in the end, that turned out to be a decent exchange sacrifice. Let's just go forward to the end of the game, and this is how the position was when he ran out of time. Anyway, pretty interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Bye.